I was clearing out my dead brother's storage unit in Kelowna when I found a folder with my name on it, and inside that folder was a loan document I had never signed. I am 67 years old. I spent 31 years pouring concrete and laying rebar across British Columbia, and I thought I knew what a hard day felt like. I had no idea. Because the hardest thing I ever faced didn't come from a job site. It came from a cardboard box that smelled like cedar and old motor oil, tucked behind a broken lawnmower in a dead man's storage unit on a Tuesday afternoon in October. My name is Norman Cleary. I live in Kamloops, and what I'm about to tell you started as something I thought would take half a day. My brother Hugh had passed 6 weeks earlier. Lung cancer, fast and mean the way it always is. No wife, no kids, just me and his daughter, my niece Sylvie, sorting through what he left behind. I offered to handle the storage unit because Sylvie was still raw with grief and I had the truck. That's it. That was the whole reason I was there. Doing what an older brother does, even after the person is gone. I want to take a moment here because I think it matters that you understand who I was before I opened that box. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I'm the kind of man who lends his truck without asking what it's for. Who co-signs things because someone he loves asks him to and he trusts that it'll be fine. I've been that man my whole life. My late wife Doris used to say I was the most trusting fool she'd ever loved. She meant it kindly. I think she'd say something different now. If you're driving right now or sitting somewhere quiet, stay with me. Because what happened in that storage unit on Birch Road is something that I think a lot of you need to hear. Pour yourself something warm. I'll take my time with this. The unit itself was the size of a one-car garage. Hugh wasn't a hoarder, but he held on to things. Tools, hockey equipment from 30 years ago, filing boxes he kept meaning to sort through. Sylvie had already taken the things she wanted. What was left was just the bones of a life. Practical things, forgotten things. I was working through the back corner, tossing cracked extension cords into a garbage bag, when I pulled a cardboard filing box off a shelf. Standard banker's box, the lid taped down with that brown packing tape that goes brittle in the cold. It had a strip of masking tape across the front with 2 words written in Hugh's handwriting. My handwriting and Hugh's were always almost identical. Our mother used to get our school notes mixed up. So when I saw the label on that box, written in a script so close to my own it made my chest tighten, something made me set the garbage bag down. The 2 words on the tape were, Norman's Things. I stood there for a moment. The unit smelled like cold concrete and WD-40. A truck rumbled past on the road outside. I remember thinking it was odd, because Hugh and I had never stored anything together. We lived 90 minutes apart. I had no things in Hugh's storage unit. I pulled the tape back and lifted the lid. Inside was a small stack of papers held together with a binder clip. A yellow sticky note on top in Hugh's handwriting. For Norman when the time comes. I still don't know what he meant by that. Maybe he meant after he was gone. Maybe he expected me to find it while he was still alive and never found the courage to hand it to me directly. I'll never know because I'll never be able to ask him. I pulled the stack out and read the first page. It was a loan agreement from a credit union in Kelowna, dated 14 months before Hugh died. The borrower's name was mine, Norman Cleary, my date of birth, my address in Kamloops. The loan amount was $82,000. I had never taken out a loan from any credit union in Kelowna in my life. My hands didn't start shaking right away. The brain protects you for a second or two. It does this thing where it just quietly refuses to accept what the eyes are sending it. I flipped to the signature page. There was my name printed neatly, and below it, a signature. Not mine. Close, but not mine. The loop on the N was wrong. I'd know my own signature after 67 years. Behind the loan agreement was a second document, a promissory note for an additional $31,000. Same name. Different date 2 months later, same wrong signature. And behind that, a third sheet. Not a bank document this time. A handwritten letter on plain white paper unsigned. It took me a minute to recognize the handwriting. I have to be honest with you. It took me a full minute, standing there in the cold with that paper in my hands, before I understood whose handwriting I was looking at. It was my son-in-law Garrett's. My daughter Rennie has been married to Garrett Stolk for 11 years. He's 41, works in commercial real estate in Vernon. Drives a truck that costs more than my first house. Always has a reason why this deal or that deal didn't quite come together. Always has a new project he's excited about. Always sitting just on the edge of the next big thing. I never loved him the way I might have hoped to love the man my daughter chose. But I told myself that wasn't my call to make. Rennie loved him. That was enough. The letter wasn't long. 3 paragraphs. It was addressed to Hugh. And what it said, in careful, measured language, was that Garrett needed Hugh to help him access a line of credit in my name. That he would handle the paperwork. That Hugh's job was simply to provide certain documents he had access to. Copies of my identification. Old tax returns I'd once shared with Rennie for a family financial planning meeting. A void check from a joint account Rennie and I had once held together before Doris passed. In return, Garrett had written, Hugh would receive $10,000, transferred quietly. I sat down on a plastic step stool. I didn't mean to. My legs just decided the ground was a better option than standing. The concrete was cold through my jeans. I read the letter again, slowly. The way you reread something when part of you is hoping the words will rearrange themselves into something less terrible. They didn't. I want to pause here and say something, because I think it matters. Hugh kept that letter. He kept every document. He kept it all in a box with my name on it, labeled it for me, and added a note that said for when the time comes. My brother, who died with things unfinished between us, had spent whatever time he had left making sure I would eventually find out what had been done to me. He couldn't bring himself to tell me face to face, but he made sure I'd know. I sat in that storage unit for a long time. Long enough that the light changed. Long enough that I could hear the guy 3 units down packing up his things and driving away. The whole time I kept thinking about Garrett at our Christmas table last December. Passing the tourtière, laughing at something on his phone, making a joke about the Canucks. My daughter beside him, pouring wine. And underneath all of it, this. I didn't call anyone right away. I drove home. The whole way back on the highway I kept the radio off and just drove. 90 minutes of mountains and dry hills, and the kind of silence that fills up a truck cab when there's too much to say and no one to say it to. When I got home, I made tea. I'm not a tea person usually. Doris was the tea drinker. But it was her habit, and it stuck with me after she passed. And sometimes it's the only thing I know to do with my hands when the rest of me doesn't know what to do at all. I set everything from that box on the kitchen table, and I stood over it like it was evidence at a crime scene. Which, I was starting to understand it was. I didn't open my laptop right away. I just looked at each document, organized them by date. The first loan had been drawn down 14 months before Hugh died. The second, 2 months later. That accounted for $113,000 in debt under my name that I knew nothing about. I thought about my credit score, about the fact that I'd been thinking, for the past year quietly in the back of my mind, about selling the house in Kamloops, and maybe buying something smaller in Penticton, closer to the water, closer to where Doris and I had always talked about retiring. I'd been thinking about talking to a mortgage broker about what I could qualify for. Now I knew why that conversation might have gone poorly. I pulled out my own phone and searched my name through the Equifax and TransUnion portals. I hadn't checked my credit in 2 years. Why would I? I don't carry debt. I paid off my truck in 2021. I own my house outright. The TransUnion report came up first. There was a flag I didn't recognize, an active line of credit, listed under my name, my SIN, my address, with a balance outstanding, $44,000, not the full amount of the loans. The rest had apparently been moved somewhere else. I set my phone face down on the table. The way you set something down when you need a second before you can look at it again. It was almost 9 at night. I thought about calling Rennie. I sat with that thought for a long time. 11 years of Sunday dinners. 11 years of watching my daughter with this man, telling myself that the little things that bothered me were just personality differences, just the gap between one generation and another. 11 years of giving them the benefit of the doubt, because that's what you do when you love someone. I picked up the phone. I didn't call Rennie. I called a man named David Chu instead. David and I had worked together on the site crew at a Thompson River Dam project back in 1998. We kept in touch the way men of our generation keep in touch. Not often, but steady. The way a fence post holds even when you forget to check it. He'd gone from construction into property law, then into elder law and financial abuse cases. He had a small office in Kamloops and a reputation for being very quiet and very thorough. He picked up on the second ring. It was 9:15 at night. He picked up. Norman. Is everything all right? I almost said yes. Old habit. 67 years of not wanting to be a burden. David, I said, I found something today. I need to talk to someone who knows what they're looking at. He didn't ask questions on the phone. He just said, come in tomorrow morning. First thing. Bring everything. I hung up and sat at that kitchen table until past midnight, going through every document again. Looking for something I'd missed, some explanation that made this less than what it was. I didn't find one. Around 1 in the morning, I opened my laptop and typed Garrett Stolk's name into a search engine. You feel strange doing that. Like you're crossing a line you shouldn't have to cross with a member of your own family. But I crossed it. The first page of results was mostly his real estate listings. Clean professional headshot. Garrett Stolk, licensed realtor, Remax Vernon. Then, on the second page, something older. A civil claim filed in the BC Supreme Court Registry 6 years ago. A former business partner, someone named Michael Finch, suing over an undisclosed financial interest in a property deal. The claim had been settled out of court, no admission of wrongdoing. The usual language. It fit too neatly. That's always the thing. When the pieces start fitting, part of you wishes they wouldn't. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark and thought about Hugh. About the fact that he'd taken $10,000. About what that felt like, sitting next to everything else. My brother. Who I'd lent money to twice without asking for it back. Who I'd helped move 3 times. Who I'd sat with through the worst months of his illness, driving to Kelowna every second weekend to bring him groceries and make sure he was eating. He'd taken $10,000 to hand my identity to the man married to my daughter. I want to be honest with you about something. The anger I felt toward Hugh that night was real. It was clean and hot, and it was there. And then underneath it, something sadder. Because Hugh had also kept every document, had labeled the box, had written the note. Whatever he'd done, at some point near the end of his life, he'd made a choice to make it right the only way he knew how. I don't know if I can forgive that. I don't know if I'm supposed to. But I understand it a little, and understanding it hurts in a way that's different from anger. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in the same bed I'd slept in for 28 years, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that I kept meaning to fix. The house was very quiet. David's office was on Victoria Street, 2nd floor above a pharmacy. He had 2 framed certificates on the wall, a desk that was too small for the amount of paper on it, and the kind of steady-eyed calm that you want from someone who is about to look at the worst thing that's happened to you and not flinch. He read through everything without speaking. I watched his face. It didn't change much. A slight tightening around the eyes at the second loan document. A small exhale when he reached the letter. He set everything down and folded his hands on the desk. "This is identity fraud," he said, "under the criminal code. Specifically section 402.2. Identity theft and 403 identity fraud. These carry serious penalties." "How serious?" Garrett Stoke, "If this letter establishes his involvement and the loan documents establish the use of your identity, is looking at up to 10 years on each count. And whoever brokered the actual credit applications may also be implicated." I looked at the window. Below, on Victoria Street, a woman was walking a golden retriever. The dog was interested in something on the sidewalk. Normal Tuesday morning in Kamloops. "What do?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that means the person across from you is thinking carefully before they speak. Which is the kind of quiet you want from a lawyer. "First, you don't contact Garrett. You don't mention this to Rennie. Not yet. I know how that sounds, Norman. But the moment Garrett knows you have this material, it disappears. The letter especially. That letter is the connective tissue. He'll destroy it. If he can. Yes, so we work first. You let me make copies of everything and have them notarized this morning. I'll pull the loan documents through the credit union and request confirmation of the applications. We also need to contact the RCMP Financial Crimes Unit. This isn't something for the local detachment. This goes to the Integrated Market Enforcement Team." He said it all very calmly, the way you'd explain a renovation plan. "Here's what we take out. Here's what we put in. Here's the order of operations." "My daughter's husband," I said. He looked at me steadily. "I know, she doesn't know. I'm almost certain she doesn't know. Then she's going to have a very hard few months," he said. "And she's going to need her father on the other side of it." That sentence landed somewhere in the middle of my chest and stayed there. I did what David told me, all of it. I didn't call Rennie that day, or the day after. I went home, I made dinner, I watched the news, I went to bed. On the outside, I was a retired man in Kamloops having a regular week. On the inside, I was carrying $113,000 of fraudulent debt under my name, and a letter in a safety deposit box that could dismantle my daughter's marriage. Garrett called me that Thursday. "Just to check in," he said. That's what he said. "Just checking in, Norman. How's the storage unit coming along? Did you get everything sorted?" I told him it went fine. Donated most of it, tossed the rest. Nothing too interesting. "Hugh didn't leave much worth keeping," I said. There was a short pause. "No, I guess not," Garrett said. I said goodbye and hung up and sat very still in the kitchen for a while. The RCMP Financial Crimes Unit moved faster than I expected. David had contacts. The application for the loans had been made online, through a third-party credit broker, someone who'd set up a shell application process and collected a fee. The credit union in Kelowna had approved them based on documentation that had been just good enough. A scan of an old ID, a tax return, a void check. All of it provided by Hugh, all of it arranged by Garrett. The investigators found the account the funds had moved into. It was registered to a numbered company in Alberta, one of those small incorporated entities that are legal and unremarkable until they're not. Garrett was listed as a director. 3 weeks after I found that box, David called me on a Saturday morning. "We're ready," he said. "The investigators want to move on Monday. There will be a meeting with Garrett. He'll be asked to come in for what he's been told is a routine matter related to a property transaction. They'll have everything when he sits down. Does Rennie know?" "Not yet. That part is yours to handle, Norman. I'd suggest before Monday. I drove to Vernon that Sunday. Rennie was in the garden when I pulled up, wearing rubber boots and her mother's old gardening hat. Wide-brimmed, faded green. She looked so much like Doris from the end of the driveway that I had to stand there for a second before I could walk toward her. She could tell something was wrong. Daughters always can. She pulled off her gloves and said, "Dad, what happened?" We sat at her kitchen table. Garrett's truck was gone. He was at the office, she said, working on a listing. I put the copy of the letter on the table between us. I watched her read it. I watched her read it twice. I watched her face do the things faces do when the world reorganizes itself without asking permission. She didn't cry right away. She asked questions first. When? How much? How long? She's her mother's daughter. She needed to understand before she could feel. She went through the loan documents one by one the same way I had in that storage unit, the same way David had on his desk, the same way the investigators had at their offices. She asked me if I was certain. "The letter is in his handwriting," I said. She put her hand over her mouth, not a dramatic gesture. Just something her hand did on its own. "Dad," she said, "I didn't know. I know you didn't. I would never, Rennie. I know," she cried then. Quiet, controlled, the way she's always cried since she was a little girl. Like she's giving herself a limited amount of time for it before she has to get back to figuring out what to do. I put my hand over hers on the table. We sat like that for a while. "What happens Monday?" she asked. I told her. She nodded. Slowly. Then she straightened her back, the way Doris used to straighten up when something difficult was in front of her, and she said, "Okay. That's all. Just okay." Like a woman closing a chapter. Garrett Stoke was arrested on Monday morning. He didn't come home Sunday night. I learned later he'd called Rennie at 11 p.m. asking if she'd seen his external hard drive. She said no. He said he needed it for the meeting Monday. She told me she'd known in that moment. She knew. There were charges under Section 402.2 and 403 of the Criminal Code. There were additional charges related to the use of the numbered company. The credit broker, someone who'd done this kind of thing before with other clients, it turned out, was also charged. I spent the next month dealing with the practical part. David walked me through a fraud declaration with both credit bureaus. The credit union in Kelowna, once presented with the investigation file, began the process of removing the fraudulent accounts from my name. I filed reports with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. I placed a fraud alert on my file with Equifax and TransUnion. I contacted the Office of Consumer Affairs. None of it was fast. None of it was simple. But it was survivable, and David made sure I understood that at every step. The house in Kamloops felt different that month. Quieter in a way that wasn't the usual quiet. More like the quiet after you've said something out loud that you'd been keeping to yourself for too long. Lighter. Emptier. Both. I want to say something to you now, because I think you've stayed with me long enough that you deserve it. If you are a person over 60, and your children or their spouses handle things for you, signing you into meetings, managing paperwork, helping with taxes, accessing accounts on your behalf, please hear me when I say this. That trust is not automatic protection. It is a door you've left open. Most of the time the right people walk through it. Sometimes they don't. In Canada, elder financial abuse is the fastest growing category of financial crime. The Canadian Centre for Elder Law estimates that between 3 and 10% of older adults experience some form of financial abuse, and the majority of cases involve someone known to the victim. Not a stranger, not a scammer calling from overseas, someone at the Christmas table. Someone who knows your daughter, your son, your grandchildren. Someone who knows your name is on the title. There are tools available to you that most people don't use until it's too late. You can pull your credit report for free through Equifax and TransUnion in Canada. You're entitled to one free report per year, and the dispute process for fraudulent accounts is clearly outlined on both sites. You can contact the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre at 1-888-495-8501 or at antifraudcentre.centreantifraud.ca. If you believe identity theft has already occurred, you can file a police report and use that report number to dispute fraudulent accounts with your financial institutions. And here is the one practical thing I want you to do this week, before you do anything else. Pull your own credit report. Not a third-party service, not an estimate, your actual full report from Equifax and TransUnion. Read every line. If there is any account listed that you do not recognize, any inquiry you don't remember authorizing, any creditor you've never heard of, that is your starting point. You are allowed to look. You are not paranoid for looking. You are awake. I think about Hugh a lot, more now than when he was alive, which is strange and also not strange at all. I think about what it costs a person to do what he did, and then what it costs them to spend the last months of their life quietly trying to undo it. I don't know if I'll ever be at peace with all of it. But I understand that the box with my name on it was the last thing he could give me. And he made sure I'd find it. Rennie is doing what people do when the life they built on a particular foundation turns out to have been built on something that wasn't real. She's going slowly, and she's going honestly, and she calls me on Sunday nights. That helps. Having her on the phone on Sunday nights helps more than I know how to say. The storage unit in Kelowna is cleared out now. I signed the paperwork and they gave it back to the facility. There's nothing left of Hughes that isn't either with me or gone. I kept the box, the one with my name on the masking tape. I put it in the back of my hall closet and I haven't decided what to do with it yet. Some days I think I should throw it out. Most days I think I'll keep it a little longer, because sometimes the truth doesn't arrive the way you expect. Sometimes it doesn't come crashing in with some dramatic moment or a confrontation you've rehearsed in your head. Sometimes it comes quietly, out of a dead man's storage unit, in a banker's box with your name written in handwriting too close to your own. So pay attention, check your credit, know your accounts. And if someone in your life is making financial decisions that you don't fully understand, ask the question you're allowed to ask. Before I go, I want to hear from you. Comment 1 if you think I handled this the right way by not confronting Garrett directly. Comment 2 if you think I should have spoken to Rennie sooner. Comment 3 if something like this has ever touched your own life, or the life of someone you love. And underneath your number, tell me where you're watching from. Your province, your city, your town. Tell me what time it is there right now. I read every one of these. A kitchen in Nova Scotia at 7 in the morning is just as good as a living room in BC at midnight. Tell me where you are. If this story reached you in any way, take 1 second and hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to put this in front of someone who needs to hear it tonight. Maybe someone who hasn't pulled their credit report in 3 years. Maybe someone whose gut has been telling them something they've been too tired to listen to. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Every week I come back with another story like this one. True in the ways that matter, real in the ways that count. Stories about family, trust, and the things we find when we're not looking for them. And remember, the most dangerous betrayals don't announce themselves. They wait. They're patient. They sit in boxes with your name on them in cold storage units, and they wait until you're ready to look. Stay careful. Stay close to the people who deserve it. And I'll see you in the next one.